of you. God won't forgive you. You are alone.
These are merely the deceitful whispers of Satan. But Jesus said, "And you should know the truth, and the truth shall set you free."
Good morning, Choctaw Road. How are y'all doing this morning? Good. Good morning. My name's Elijah Seth Michael Meir. I'm the student pastor here at Choctaw Road, and I'm excited and grateful for this opportunity to be able to preach to y'all this morning. We're in week 2 of our series, The Lies Satan Tells, and this week is titled, You'll Be Happy When Blank. And so it's intentional for that blank to be there because what I want y'all to do is to write down what you believe would make you happy. All right, so that could be a new boat, it could be a house, a car. For me, it is to have a child sleep throughout the entire night. How about y'all? Yeah? Some of y'all? So y'all take a few seconds to write down what you believe would make you happy. While I was preparing for this, I was trying to think of a movie or a show that had a character that was either happy throughout the entire movie or someone who found happiness at the end. And the movie I thought of was Forrest Gump. And I love Forrest Gump. It was a great movie. It has some memorable lines. And Forrest, for the most part, was pretty happy. Right? He had a difficult life, but remained happy throughout the entire movie. And as I got older, I started paying attention to other characters in this movie. And one of them was Jenny, right? That'll be the last one I do. I won't do any more than that. But Jenny, she was chasing happiness her entire life. She would periodically pop up in Forrest's life, and you would kind of get a snippet of what's going on. And at the beginning, she's chasing freedom from her abusive father. She's chasing love in different relationships. She wanted independence and refused help from others even when she needed it. So throughout the entire film, she is chasing happiness in the things in this world. And it's sad to watch her fail time and time again to find this happiness. But then I start looking at my life and I realize that I'm very similar to her in pursuing happiness through relationships or material things or physical fitness or accomplishments or trying to get the approval of others. How many of y'all can relate to that? A few of us? Good. It's because Satan uses happiness as a lure, as part of his lie to us, that we can find happiness in this world. And so this morning, we're going to follow the Israelites through the Bible and look at 3 different times where they were chasing something other than God. And I'm pretty confident that what you wrote down in your blank will fall under one of these 3 things. And if you don't think it does, come find me afterwards and I'll show you how you're wrong. Last week, Rick said that goodness cannot be found outside of Jesus. This week, what I want you to walk away with is lasting happiness cannot be found outside of God. So before we get into this, let's pray and pray that God would reveal a lie in our lives that we're buying into and reveal the truth for us to live in. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for today. I thank you for your word. God, I pray that the word that you have for us this morning, that we would pay attention. God, that what you are trying to reveal to us, Lord, let us see the lie in our lives and be able to hold on to the truth that you have for us in your word. In your name I pray. Amen. All right, so first lie is you'll be happy when you have new. And we see this in Exodus 32, 1 through 6. After Israel escaped Egypt through God's deliverance, they are wandering the desert, learning about who this God is. And for 2 months, they are traveling to Mount Sinai, and when they get there, Moses would ascend the mountain, receive instructions from God, and then descend the mountain and relay that information to the Israelites. This goes on for a couple of times, and the 6th time Moses goes up there, God gives them instructions on how the tabernacle is supposed to look, on how the priests are supposed to dress. He even inscribes in stone the 10 Commandments. However, this sixth time going up, it takes 40 days and 40 nights. It's a long time, right? How many of y'all, when we were reading about this in the BRP, were like, man, this feels like 40 days and 40 nights reading about this? That's what it was like for me. All right, I found myself falling asleep reading about how things are supposed to look. Lucky for you, we're not going to do that today. We're just going to read what the Israelites were doing during this time. So if y'all read with me, Exodus 32, 1 through 6. Now when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people assembled about Aaron and said to him, "Come, make us a god who will go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has come of him." Aaron said to them, "Tear off your gold rings, which are in the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me." Then all the people tore off their gold rings, which were in their ears, and brought them to Aaron. He took this from their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool and made it into a molten calf. And they said, "This is your God, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt." Now when Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made a proclamation and said, "Tomorrow shall be a feast of the Lord." So the next day they rose early and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat, drink, and rose up to play. So I fall asleep reading about this. The Israelites built a golden calf to worship. I don't think I did too bad on this, right? So the Israelites, they build this golden calf because they are wanting something new. All right, they think Moses has died, and this God that delivered them from Egypt, they don't quite know yet. They don't trust Jehovah. And so they build this golden calf because they need something that they can control and something that would make them feel happy. Have you ever thought why you're so attracted to something new? Why we fall into this lie of something new is going to give me this happiness? I realized this about myself, that when I get bored or stressed, I begin to start looking for something new. I need some excitement in my life, right? You can ask my wife and my mama, I live on adrenaline and dopamine. All right, so when I don't have those things, I get bored and I start looking for, oh man, a motorcycle, that'd be a lot of fun. Some new shoes, a new gadget, new tools, or even maybe a dog that my wife doesn't want to buy. That would give me an adrenaline rush just to see how mad she gets, right? My most recent purchase came after I had preached at a weekend event for students in Texas, and I had to preach 4 different messages that weekend, and it was a lot. I'd never done something like that before, and it was a little stressful. It was exciting as well. I loved every minute of it. But once I got home, that adrenaline rush crashed, right? I was exhausted, and I was trying to think, man, what's the next thing that can give me excitement, that give me that same feeling I just had this weekend? Well, I went through the list of things that I normally think about, and I landed on a skateboard. I know, I'm 31 years old, haven't skated in 2 decades. Okay? And also, on top of that, we live in Choctaw. There are no roads to skate on in Choctaw, right? Unless y'all live in better neighborhoods than I do. Mine's terrible. I believe that this item, this thing, would give me happiness or excitement back into my life. I believe that the lie of a temporary shot of dopamine from a temporary thing was more important than the eternal things of God. Because here's the thing. Part of the story that I left out is when I got home, I didn't spend much time with God. I didn't open his word to see how I was supposed to live my life differently. I didn't spend some time in prayer to meet with him and to connect with him. I chose what was temporary over what's eternal. So what is it in your life that makes you fall victim to this lie? Is it boredom? Stress? Is it jealousy that your friend has something new and you want something new too? Or are you just unhappy about life? Don't buy into this lie of new that is going to bring us happiness, because it's just a distraction to keep us from pursuing the eternal things of God. Second lie is this: you'll be happy when you have more. All right, so those Israelites, they're not very smart, are they? In Numbers 11, we see that they're not wanting something new this time, they're wanting something more. And so this trip to the promised land takes about 2 years. And throughout this entire time, their clothes never wore out. They were protected by God unless they did something stupid and disobeyed him, then they weren't. They were given water, and they also had plenty of food. All right, they had enough food for every person to be satisfied through manna. And manna was this thing it says is like coriander seed, all right, and it tasted fairly good, and they had enough for everyone. However, along the way and very close to the promised land, they began to think about what they had back in Egypt. So let's go ahead and read that real quick. Numbers 11:4 says this: the rabble who were among them had greedy desires, and also the sons of Israel wept again and said, "Who will give us meat to eat? We remember the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, and the onions, and the garlic, but our appetite is gone. There's nothing at all to look at except for this manna." And these Israelites are pretty ungrateful, right? They had everything they needed to survive this journey in the wilderness. And all they could think about was the things they used to have in Egypt. And I get it. Eating the same thing for 2 years would be difficult. I need some garlic in my food as well, right? The problem is they were focused on what they didn't have instead of what they did have. Or they wanted to go back to the life they used to live because they had an abundance of food and variety there. They were choosing the more they can get in Egypt instead of enough that they can get from God. They had enough, but enough wasn't enough for the Israelites. It's crazy to think of how quickly they forget about what their life was like in Egypt. They lived a life in slavery, and they begged God to rescue them. Their grumbling even led to Moses asking God to kill him because the pressure of providing this meat was too great for him. So God hears Israel, he hears their cry, and he says, you know what? You want more? You can have more. And Numbers 11, 18 through 20 says this: and say to the people, consecrate yourself for tomorrow, and you shall eat meat. For you have wept in the hearing of the Lord, saying, who will give us meat to eat? For it is better in us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you meat, and you shall eat. You shall not just eat 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, 10 days, or 20 days, but a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils and becomes loathsome to you. Because you have rejected the Lord who is among you, and have wept before him, saying, why did we come out of Egypt? The Israelites wanted more, and they got more, but it came at a cost. You see, oftentimes our desire for more can take away from the provisions that God has given us. God has provided many things for us in this life, right? But because of our nature, whether it be fear, thinking we do not have enough and we need to have more, or it be jealousy and we see something that someone else has and we've got to have that as well. But the reality is God knows exactly what we need in this life. Think about it like this. If you get more things, are you going to take care of what you already have? You see, I get excited when I see that Amazon box on my porch, right? And that's been happening a lot recently, and I got to figure that out. But hopefully I get it figured out. Because here's the deal. Recently, I picked up a pair of shoes out of my closet and had to dust off the dust on my sneakers because I hadn't worn them in a while. I've got plenty of sneakers, y'all. But I didn't take care of what I already got. What about more time? If you had more time, would you use it or would you waste it? Like how many of us are sitting on the couch scrolling, watching videos or looking on Facebook Marketplace, and we're using all that time that we wish we had more of looking at nonsense? Or what if it's like, for me, I will want to take a nap after this. I'll just say, I need 5 minutes. And it ended up being 2 hours, right? Just 5 minutes. We have 24 hours to use in this life. And we've got to make sure we are responsible for how we use it, right? How about this? What about what the great poet Biggie Smalls says, more money? Man, y'all just... Olivia, I thought you'd say something. I know you know about that. But more money, more problems. Like you may think like me, if I could win the lottery, man, I would do such great things for the people around me. I would buy so many things for people, but the reality is if I'm not being generous with what I have right now, I'm not going to be any more generous with more money. God knows what we can handle, and maybe he's waiting until we grow closer to him, grow spiritually, and trust him before he gives us more. Could what you're wanting be taking away from what you already have? Right? Like, if we're chasing more in this life, then we're taking away time and energy from something else. Then we'll start wondering, what happened to our kids? What happened to my marriage? What happened to myself? Because if I am chasing more of the things of this world, then I'm chasing less of God. Something that stood out to me in the story is Israel's desire for more made Moses ask God to kill him because of the amount of pressure he was feeling. Could what you're wanting more of be putting so much pressure on yourself that you want to give up? Or how about your mate? If you're putting so much pressure on them to want more, are you putting so much pressure on them that they want to give up as well? Or maybe it takes away time for them to grow spiritually. The lie of more will oftentimes take away from God has provided for you. So Satan, he'll lie about new, he lies about more, and he'll also say you'll be happy when you have comfort. So it only takes a couple of pages to turn to in Numbers 14 to see the Israelites doing something dumb again, right? This time, Israel's at the border of the promised land, and they're about to enter in, but they want to see what this land is actually like. So they get 12 spies to go in, and their mission was to find out, is this land good? Is it bad? Is it fat? Is it lean? Does it have an abundance of trees and fruit? They also were to find out what the people were like who inhabit it, because they're going to have to clear out this land to inhabit it themselves. So they're wondering, are the people strong? Are they weak? Do they have fortified cities or just small camps? And so these spies, they spend 40 days and 40 nights out in the promised land looking at how incredible this land is. And they come back and they return and they give the report saying, man, this land is incredible. It is a land that is truly flowing with milk and honey. Here's evidence of the produce that is there. They're excited about this land. But then there's 10 spies who come back and say, man, those people are pretty incredible too. They're strong. They have big fortified cities. And not only that, there are giants in the land. The spies, they did not want to go into the promised land because of how difficult it would be to take it. You see, what the spies forgot to remember is who gave them that land. Because this land was promised to the Israelites long before any of them were born. God promised this land to Abraham. He said, your descendants will have this land and they will have everything that they need. It'll be a place where they can have peace and can worship me. But they were so focused on how difficult it was that they forgot that this is a promise. So let's read Numbers 14, 1-4, and see how the Israelites respond. Then all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night, and all the sons of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. When the whole congregation said to them, would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would we have died in the wilderness? Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become like plunder. Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? So they said to one another, let us appoint a leader and return to Egypt. So because of this bad report that they received, they did not want to go into the promised land. They began to question why they were even there. God was going to give them everything that they needed. He's going to give them the new and the more that they wanted, but they chose instead not to trust him. They chose comfort over the promise. They even chose their past of Egypt instead of their future in the promised land. Now, how many times have we just sought out things of this world to bring us comfort instead of facing what was difficult? Like we use food as comfort, entertainment, relationships, just to fill this void and try to find happiness. For me, 5 years ago was the most difficult time of my life. I had lost my father to an unexpected heart attack. And this was so difficult for me because I was only 26 years old. I'd just been married. I'd been married for about 2 years, bought a house, and had a kid on the way. I was about to experience everything that you could experience in this life as a man without my father. And I was so angry. And that anger turned into sin, and that I slipped into this person I used to be before knowing Jesus, because that was way more comfortable than spending time with God. To be honest, I didn't really want to spend much time with God at all. I was angry with my wife, my kids, even some coworkers, because I would not grab hold of the promises that are in His Word. It wasn't until some men in this church came alongside me and began to encourage me to seek God for comfort and not the things in this world. And it wasn't until then that my life began to change back to the way God wanted it. So have you been at the point of hurt that you would give or do anything to be happy? The Bible teaches that He restores our soul. He comforts us. He protects us. Why would we not want to turn to Him? Is that not worth more than the temporary comfort that this world offers us? The last thing for you guys is this. Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians 4:17-18, "For our momentary light affliction is producing for us an eternal weight of glory far beyond all comparison. While we look not at the things which are seen, but the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things that are not seen are eternal." For Israel, conquering the promised land would have been difficult, would have been a momentary light affliction compared to the greatness of living in the promise of God. We're never promised a life of comfort as a Christian, right? Life is still difficult. But we do have the promises of God that His presence and His peace would be with us. It's difficult to have an eternal perspective on this life when life gets tough, and because we can see what the world offers us for comfort. But then we ignore God's promises. This momentary light affliction does not come close to the eternal weight of glory that is available to every believer. Y'all go ahead and bow your heads real quick. Got a couple of questions for you guys. If you do not have a relationship with Jesus, the only thing you have in this life is to chase new, more, and comfort. What Jesus gives us is a life of promises that God has in His Word. Will you try Jesus? Second question I want you to think about is that the thing that you wrote down, is that a replacement, a distraction, or an escape from this life to keep you from meeting with God? This life is difficult. If you're chasing things outside of God and you need help understanding the promises of God, come find us up here. Find a pastor and let us walk you through that. Last thing is, if you do not have a church home and would like to be part of this congregation of believers who will walk this difficult life with you and share these promises with you, this is a great place to be. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this church. I thank you so much for your word. And God, I pray that if there's a lie that was revealed to us this morning, God, that you would help us act on it. God, help us to find your promises and your truth so that we can live a life in happiness and lasting happiness in you. In your heavenly name I pray. Amen.